The Leg Destroyer versus the Teep Master. Yuki Yoza versus Jonathan Haggerty is the fight every kickboxing fan wants to see. Two incredible fighters, arguably in their athletic prime, going head to head for the One Championship Bantamweight kickboxing world title. Before we get into the predictions, let's start the breakdown by looking at the strengths and weaknesses of both men and seeing where they could potentially find success exploiting the other's flaws. Let's kick it off with the current champion, John Haggerty. Front kick. Haggerty is a Muay Thai stylist, and like any good Nat Muay, he has an excellent teep. Haggerty's teep is fast and powerful, and he can take a fighter clean off their feet with it. Every time he takes a step back into southpaw or lifts his lead leg, he gets a defensive reaction from the opponent. He can then use these fakes to phase into a different, often more substantial attack. He steps back into southpaw and then quickly strides back through to orthodox, changing the tempo of his movements, which can be jarring for the opposition. If they move back, he takes the space and applies more pressure. If they remain in range, Haggerty can let off with whichever shot feels appropriate given the distance.
Front kick from blistering. Beautiful kick to the...
When you look at Haggerty's pad work with renowned striking coach Chris Knowles, you can see how he builds his offense using the teep and the different setups he has from faking it. The step backs and shifting stance opens up a lot of doors for the general. That said, the teep isn't something we've seen as much of in Haggerty's kickboxing matchups when compared to his Muay Thai fights, and that might be a key tactic in Haggerty's ability to prevent Yoza from walking him down. Left kick. The left kick is closer to the opponent than the right side in an orthodox versus orthodox matchup. This means left high kicks aren't usually as powerful, but they have the advantage of blindsiding the opponent. Haggerty can whip it up to the head from close range and he catches people by surprise. Boxing.
Utilize that clinch yet to close that distance. Step right hand.
The big kibosh!
Missed and then came right back in with that leg kick.
Haggerty's boxing is sharp and he has a precise and powerful right hand. Punch for punch, it could be argued that Haggerty is a bigger hitter than Yoza, but they have a different punching style. Haggerty has more of a Muay Thai rhythm to his boxing and punches in a more traditional left-right or right-left rhythm. Every punch is thrown with intent and full commitment. There isn't much thrown out to test or feel. Haggerty hits hard and he hits with bad intentions. Explosiveness. Jonathan Haggerty is an explosive and dynamic striker, with his athleticism forming the foundation of his fighting style. He possesses a rare ability to close the distance in an instant, often catching opponents off guard with sudden shifts in tempo. His movement is sharp and unpredictable, and his capacity to accelerate into strikes makes him a constant threat in any exchange. As the formula goes, power equals force times velocity, and Haggerty is the embodiment of that principle. He doesn't just hit hard, he hits fast, and the combination of the speed in which he can cover distance and the intent behind his strikes allows him to generate fight-ending power. He puts his full body weight into every strike. Whether it's a clean punch, a snapping kick, or a rapid-fire combination, he can change the momentum of a bout in a single moment. His explosiveness makes him incredibly dangerous as he's capable of swinging the momentum of a fight in his favour with one exchange. Movement. Haggerty's movement is his first line of defence, and as spoken about prior, he's a fast and explosive athlete that packs a lot of power, but his movement and ringcraft are constantly improving. Haggerty's always been light on the feet, but it's more noticeable against certain opponents, which tells me it's a tactical adjustment to adapt to different styles. Against the Chinese technician, a former K1 champion in Wei Ray, Haggerty tried his best to get in and get out, bouncing in and out on his toes to avoid being countered. He'd also cut angles whilst punching, which is an evolving aspect of his game. In Muay Thai, we would usually see Haggerty step into a clinch or strike with an elbow on the end of his punch combinations, but under the kickboxing format, where this isn't permitted, he's learning to not stick around for the return fire. What Haggerty may lack in boxing defence, he can make up for with good footwork and ringcraft, providing he's fit enough to maintain it for the full 5 rounds. Now let's move on to the Japanese slickster. Kicking game. The kicking arsenal of karate is unrivaled, and Yoza has every move in the book, with the low kick becoming the staple of his attritional warfare. The issue that any Yoza opponent faces is that he can get to the legs from every angle and at every range. It's very hard to get away from his leg kicks, and the calf muscle becomes compromised very easily. Yoza is ruthless and persistent with the low kick. He smashes kicks into the legs that would make most wince at the prospect, with the risk of breaking every toe being at the forefront of one's mind. This may of course prove an issue for Haggerty, who has not yet encountered a man with such an unorthodox kicking style, but we'll get more into that later. It's something that is quite unique to the Japanese fighters, and the first time John sees it will likely be when he's in the ring with Yoza. I feel like Yoza is a very difficult man to prepare for. Variety. When we watch Yuki Yoza hit the pads, we can see the sheer variety in his work. Punches and low kicks thrown at the same time, stab kicks to the solarplex, head and body combinations thrown without pause. Every inch of padding worn by his coach, Masakazu Watanabe, is required. Watching Yoza hit pads is an experience within itself, but this method of training has ensured that Yoza will attack every target available when he's given the range, and he won't hesitate. Yoza will pull the trigger. Yoza blends his boxing with leg attacks like nobody else I've seen. It is fast, it is fluid, and it is powerful. Boxing. Yoza's boxing is fluid and smothering. He's a front foot pressure fighter and he's happy when he's glove to glove with the opponent. Yoza hits the head and body, he'll double up on the same side, right or left, and he throws a lot of feelers to pick his big shot. Not everything Yoza does is hunting for the knockout, but more so intended to overwhelm. Defense. Defensively, Yoza's philosophy looks simple: shell up, close the distance, limit the opponent's striking power, and then destroy their base with kicks. But Yoza has some subtleties to his defence which allow him to hold his ground. At times he switches to a cross guard, bringing both forearms horizontally across the head and body. This is particularly effective for blocking knees, and from this position he can also shove his opponents back, knocking them off balance. We could see from his fight with Petstamp his adaptability to deal with the knees in this range, using the forearms to block against them whilst remaining close enough to counterpunch. Yoza's defence is very dynamic, and it might be an underappreciated asset to his game. Now that we've analysed the strengths, we need to shine a spotlight onto their weaknesses so we can better understand how they match up against each other. Let's continue with Yoza and look at where he might have some holes. Yoza's weaknesses. Yoza is a pressure fighter, and obviously this means he likes to come forward. When an opponent can force him to fight on the back foot, he simply isn't as effective, and that is exactly what happened in the 2 fights he lost in his kickboxing career. When we look at the 2 losses on Yoza's resume, it was against opponents that could consistently apply pressure and force Yoza to fight going backwards. That said, Yoza lost by a split and majority decision, meaning they were competitive affairs. He hasn't been dominated at any point in his career, but he is beatable, or was anyway. Now I know this is talking about weaknesses, but something that's immediately noticeable when looking at his loss with Kajiro Miyakoshi is his boxing is just nowhere near the level it is today. He was heavily reliant on kicks, and he needed space to be able to do this effectively. If he wasn't going forward, he just didn't hit the same. He didn't have the tools at this point to keep Miyakoshi off him, and his boxing is an area that's massively improved up to now. With that said, Yoza still very much likes to fight going forward, so putting him on his heels has been shown as a way to get him out of his groove. If Haggerty can do this, then he's got a good chance of giving Yoza some problems. Outside of this, it's honestly difficult to find a glaring hole. For example, as much as his defence can rely on a high guard, which could be exploited with hand traps, or an easy target for a fighter to score some points on with a combination, Yoza's guard is fluid and adaptable. As talked about, he has an excellent defence. He doesn't take a lot of clean shots, and he's good at spoiling an opponent's work. He knows how to tie up and slow things down, and he will block kicks when needed to. That, or he kicks out the kicker's supporting leg. So let's take a look at the flaws of Haggerty. Haggerty's weaknesses. Haggerty's major flaw has been his lack of close-range defensive options. He's shown vulnerability when opponents can apply consistent pressure, and he can have a hard time managing his range. This has been apparent in his fights with Rodtang, Same and Felipe Lobo. His defence at times is very limited, with Haggerty shelling up behind a high guard when he's backed up against the ropes. This vulnerability can be compounded when he raises the front leg to Teep, but the opponent gets on top of him. Being on one leg is a terrible idea once an opponent steps into punching range. Haggerty's main form of defence is footwork. He is light on the toes and agile, which can be proven very effective when managing range, but if he begins to tire and slow down, his lack of defence in the mid-range becomes obvious. In Muay Thai he can at least sling an elbow to intercept an opponent as they box, but in kickboxing he won't have that option available. Now I think those are the obvious weaknesses of both men. So let's look at both their fight IQ and strategy. Both fighters come from elite gyms that boast a proven track record of success. Haggerty trains out of the Knowlesy Academy led by Lyndon and Christian Knowles, brothers with world level experience who have developed multiple domestic and international champions. He also works closely with Team Underground headed by John's father, another respected figure in the sport who can only assume coach John and his brother Freddie from the start and set them on this path to achieving greatness. He's obviously had a massive impact on their career and he can be seen cornering both the boys. The Knowlesy gym is known for producing fighters with strong Muay Thai fundamentals paired with unique individual flair. John will no doubt approach this bout with a well-prepared game plan. He's shown the ability to make subtle stylistic adjustments from fight to fight and has repeatedly demonstrated his ability to rise to the occasion. His fight with Nongo, arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter on the ONE roster at the time, was absolutely spectacular.
Heavy right and the left. Haggerty can sense the belt. He can feel the title within reach. And that's it.
Jonathan Haggerty does it in Bangkok tonight.
Styles make matches.
Yoza, meanwhile, is part of the elite team Vasilius camp, home to standouts like ONE champion Masaki Noiri and superstar Takeru. Yoza is often seen cornering teammates, a sign his deep strategic understanding goes beyond simply executing techniques. He's shown a clear ability to adapt under pressure and will need every ounce of that awareness to solve the riddle of Haggerty's movement and long-range weapons. I would imagine Haggerty's game plan will be to use lateral movement, be light on his feet and control the distance with his teep and kicks, before coming in hard with heavy boxing combinations. Yoza, on the other hand, I imagine will be looking to come forward, apply his usual kicking pressure, battering the legs and body of Haggerty, trying to force him to the ropes or in the corner, where he can let go with his combinations. Skill for skill, this has the potential to be a brilliant fight. I would say the main questions are, will John be able to control the distance and tempo of the fight with his speed and movement? Will his clinical Muay Thai style be enough to confuse and disrupt Yoza from getting into his groove? Or will Yoza walk Haggerty down, pin him to the ropes and batter him with combinations on the inside? Will the leg kicks compromise Haggerty early and slow him down, leading to a more stationary and flat-footed fighter that is forced to exchange? I guess only time will tell. If you held a gun to Pro Striking's head and forced him to pick a winner, he'd take the bullet. But in all seriousness, I would have to go with Yoza. Although Haggerty might be the current kickboxing champion, this isn't his first sport, and he is still relatively new to the style. If this fight was to be fought in the 4-ounce gloves under Muay Thai rules, maybe I'd be picking the general. But it's a big ask for him to beat arguably one of the best kickboxers on the planet pound for pound in Yuki Yoza. I think the areas where John is weakest match up well with Yoza's style under the rule set, particularly when fought over 5 rounds in the bigger gloves, where Haggerty won't have the same effect with his boxing and has shown that he can be worn down over the distance. But Pro Striking doesn't mind being proven wrong. He did after all once pick Takeru to beat Rodtang, but maybe we'll forget about that one. Will it be and still, or will we hear and new? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Pro Striking appreciates you as much as a John Haggerty teep, and not as much as a Yuki Yoza calf kick on a semi-conscious wounded opponent.